Music can be quite symmetrical, which is nice because humans tend to love symmetry. If we were to play a section of music, and then play a different section of music, and then play the first section again, we would have a form known as ABA, or perhaps a verse, a chorus, and then the verse again. This form is just an extension of the most simplistic progression in Western harmony, in which the goal is largely to go from 1 to 5 and then back to 1 again. And it's not just progressions that can be symmetrical, the chords themselves can be symmetrical too. Like the Augmented Triad, which is just a series of major thirds. This chord evenly divides the octave into thirds, much like the tritone evenly splits the octave into halves. And much in the same way that the fully diminished 7 chord splits the octave evenly into fourths, as it is just a series of minor thirds. But you have to be careful with this series though, as the minor third above G flat isn't A, but B double flat. This can make for some really weird note names the further you go up in the series. We could also make harmony symmetrical on a certain pivot point. Ernst Levy called this negative harmony, where we invert harmony around an axis. If C and G are our anchors, then the midpoint E quarter flat is our axis. The negative harmony of G7 is D half diminished 7. In a similar way, we could see a symmetry between the naturally occurring overtone series and the more theoretical undertone series, or concepts developed by Harry Partch like O-tonality and U-tonality. Full melodies can be symmetrical, like this crab canon from Bach, which itself is a palindrome. Of course, that is just a glorified version of the concepts of retrograde and inversion, where retrograde is a series of notes played in reverse of the prime, giving it a horizontal symmetry, whereas inversion is a series of notes played upside down of the prime, giving it a vertical symmetry. We could also have a retrograde inversion, which would logically have both horizontal and vertical symmetry in relation to the prime. If melodies can be symmetrical, then scales can be as well. This is the whole tone scale. Every note in it is a whole tone away from the previous member of the scale. It evenly divides the octave into sixths, with the direct center being the tritone. Of course, that means that we could also evenly divide the octave into twelfths, and that's the case with the chromatic scale, which is much like the whole tone scale, except it's constructed of minor seconds instead of major seconds. Double the fun. And when we're dealing with all 12 notes, a lot of symmetrical patterns can emerge. When all 12 notes are present, it's called an aggregate. If we have 2 sets of 6 notes, and between them we can make an aggregate, we would call those complementary sets. These sets don't necessarily have to be symmetrical themselves, but they can be, and if they are, we call them combinatorial. Assume we have 2 sets of 6 notes. We would call a group of 6 notes a hexachord. If we have 2 hexachords of the same order that can be combined without pitch class duplication and therefore complete an aggregate, they are considered to be combinatorial by hexachord. A possible example of hexachordal combinatoriality is the combination of 2 whole tone scales. The whole tone scale is called a mode of limited transposition because you can only make so many of them before they start wrapping back on top of themselves. If we have a whole tone scale starting on C and another one starting on D flat, we have hexachordal combinatoriality. 2 hexachords made up of the same intervals without pitch class duplication. Each set is symmetrical within itself, and both combine to be a symmetrical aggregate. Perfectly symmetrical. Isn't it beautiful? Thanks for watching this episode of 2-Minute Music Theory. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Also be sure to check out my other channel, Jesse Strickland Music, which is home to all of my compositions. And if you're the kind of person who uses social media, be sure to connect with me over there.